Hello, welcome to my channel, Anglican Aesthetics. This will hopefully be a pretty quick video, I hope. I wanted to cover the issue of torture. And, part of my reason for doing these sorts of videos, and I want to reiterate this again and again, is not to bash our Roman brothers and sisters in Christ, but to promote ecumenical unity. It's to promote honest ecumenical dialogue and to pinpoint the issues that still divide us and the issues on account of which the Reformation continues until we see a Reformed Catholic Church. So, in this video, I wanted to cover the issue of torture in particular. Now, Rome's stance today on torture is laudable, it's commendable. There's a lot to be praised about it, but it is a magisterial reversal. And it's a very clear issue of a magisterial reversal. And I want to argue that it creates the following problem. It kind of generates the sort of argument. If torture is intrinsically evil, then authorizing someone to torture another is to authorize them to do something intrinsically evil. The magisterium authorized magistrates to torture. Therefore, the magisterium authorized someone to do something intrinsically evil. And this will cut against the claim that the faithful are always obligated to submit to the magisterium, even in her non-infallible teaching, because as we've covered again and again on this channel, in Donum Veritatis, in De Verbum, and other sorts of texts, there's been a sort of rich tradition of stating that the faithful are obligated to submit even to non-infallible teaching. What we'll find is that this creates a problem historically as we examine the issue of torture. Okay, so what does Rome teach today on torture? This is from the papal encyclical by Pope John Paul II, who is a wonderful theologian in many, many ways. But this is his papal encyclical teaching on torture. Reason attests that there are objects of human act which are by their nature incapable of being ordered to God, because they radically contradict the good of the person made in his image. These are the acts which in the Church's moral tradition have been termed intrinsically evil. They are such always and per se, in other words, on account of their very object and quite apart from the ulterior intentions of the one acting in the circumstances. Consequently, without in the least denying the influence on morality exercised by circumstances and especially by intentions, the Church teaches that there exists acts which per se and in themselves, independently of circumstances, are always seriously wrong by reason of their object. And in this document, what we're going to find is he lists torture as one of these. So Veritatis Splendor continued. The Second Vatican Council itself, in discussing the respect due to the human person, gives a number of examples of such acts. Whatever is hostile to life itself, such as any kind of homicide, genocide, abortion, euthanasia, and voluntary suicide. Whatever violates the integrity of the human person, such as mutilation, physical and mental torture, and attempts to coerce the spirit. Whatever is offensive to human dignity, such as subhuman living conditions, arbitrary imprisonment, deportation, slavery, prostitution, trafficking, degrading conditions of work, etc. If acts are intrinsically evil, a good intention or particular circumstance can diminish their evil, but they cannot remove it. They remain irremediably evil acts per se and in and of themselves. They are not capable of being ordered to God and to the good of the person. Okay, so note what it's saying, that these acts, including physical and mental torture and attempts to coerce the spirit, are intrinsically evil, cannot be remediated. This is both from the Second Vatican Council and Pope John Paul II. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, so Ad Extirpanda is a infamous document promulgated in the 13th century, and the reason it's infamous is because it was used to authorize the Inquisition's uses of the methods of torture. So before a Roman Catholic comes to say something like, oh, well, either this is vague, or it's non-infallible, or it's insignificant, or whatever, this bull was the justification for the methods of the Inquisition. Now, one can say, well, maybe the Inquisition went overboard in certain circumstances. Regardless, there is a clear authorization of torture in this document. So this is from Law 25, and I'll link the full documents in the comments below so you can read them as well. But it reads as follows. The head of state or ruler must force all the heretics whom he has in custody, provided he does so without killing them or breaking their arms or legs, as actual robbers and murderers of souls and thieves of the sacraments of God and Christian faith, to confess their errors. Okay, so again, the head of state must force heretics to confess their errors and accuse other heretics whom they know and specify their motives, and those whom they have seduced, and those who have lodged them and defended them as thieves and robbers of material goods, are made to accuse their accomplices and confess the crimes they have committed. So it's authorizing, again, the head of state to employ the state's resources, to employ various methods of the state, to force, with the sole limitation of don't kill and don't break the arms or legs. Now, in the actual practice of the Inquisition, what ended up happening is that the Inquisition would do this anyway and cause permanent harm and then say, well, it's basically the heretic's fault for putting themselves in danger. Even if you want to say, well, that's an abuse of this document, maybe. But what's not are things like waterboarding, which the Inquisition did. Things like beating the heretics. Things like putting them in solitary confinement or whatever. These are the sorts of methods that were authorized by magisterial teaching. This is a papal bull. And what we find in the rest of the bull, as we'll see, is that it authorized the deprivation of their property. So I'm going to read some of this. It's in super tiny font again. I wanted to try to get most of this up there, but here it is. Okay, so therefore, by the common council of our brothers, and with the consent of the archbishops and bishops present at the apostolic see, we strictly prohibit anyone from receiving, defending, favoring, or believing heretics in any way, firmly decreeing that if anyone presumes to do any of these things unless he ceases from his presumption, after being admonished once or twice, he shall be made infamous by law. And there are a number of prohibitions here. You can't hold public office. You will be disinherited. You can't be a judge. Your judgments won't have any firmness. You can't make a will. You can't be a lawyer. You're basically completely excluded from common life. If you believe a heretic, defend a heretic, receive them, favor them, anyone of that, and you're disinherited. So your inheritance becomes the property of the state and the church. And it says at the end of there, nor should the inheritance of Orthodox sons be impeded by the pretense of compassion. So what it's getting at there is that even if you have an Orthodox child, a child who repents of heresy, that's not a grounds to not seize the inheritance of heretics. Namely, its reasoning goes, because children are temporally punished for the crimes of their parents, according to canonical sanction and even sometimes divine judgment. Now, there are a lot of things wrong with that sentence, but we'll focus on the important bits for our purposes. It's saying that because children are sometimes canonically and temporally punished for the sins of their parents, that therefore it is good and right to take away their inheritance, even if they're Orthodox. This is a form of coercion. Right? This is a form of coercing the spirit, which ostensibly was said by Vatican II to be an intrinsic evil. Okay, so really quick, some of the implications here. Donum Veritatis, Dei Verbum, and the Professio Fide all say that the faithful are obligated to give religious submission of mind and will to the magisterium. Okay? What does that mean? Well, that means that no matter what the magisterium teaches, if it's acting in its official magisterial capacity, according to Donum Veritatis, it's given divine aid such that the faithful should be able to submit to it. So even if it's wrong, divine aid at least ensures, ostensibly, according to the theory, that you should be able to submit to the magisterium. But magisterially, the Second Vatican Council and Pope John Paul II has said that torturing was intrinsically evil. So we can summarize the argument as such. If these documents are true, then the faithful were obliged under ad extirpanda, under other documents that legitimize the use of coercion and torture against heretics, were obliged to submit to command to perform something intrinsically evil. Since the faithful, right, so this is an if P then Q. If these are true, then the faithful are obliged to submit to something, or were obliged to submit to something, to submit to a command to perform something intrinsically evil. Since the faithful are never obligated to perform something intrinsically evil, these documents are false. That's a modus tollens. So, if you agree, as you're obligated to do, with the Second Vatican Council, with Pope John Paul II, if you're Roman Catholic, that torture is intrinsically evil, is intrinsically wrong. And I think they got that right. Is intrinsically evil and wrong. Then you have to say that those documents authorize the use. And remember, the Second Vatican Council and Pope John Paul II said physical or mental torture, either, are intrinsically evil. So you have to say then that the methods of the Inquisition, which were only circumscribed by loss of life or limb, were magisterially authorized, and therefore the magisterium authorized something that the magisterium recognizes as intrinsically evil. And how can a faithful Christian ever be obligated to submit and perform something intrinsically evil? And how can something that's been given divine assistance, allegedly, such that the faithful are always obligated to give religious submission of mind and will, how can something be given divine assistance and then still go on to obligate the faithful to do something that's intrinsically evil and therefore destructive to their soul? I hope this video is helpful. I hope this is a short one that pushes the discussion just a little bit forward and pushes us towards talking about some of the hard issues that still separate Protestants and Roman Catholics. God bless.